Hello friends, our today's topic is COVID-19 implications for business and education. We are going to discuss today how COVID-19 or coronavirus has made difference to the future of business and education. So let's take topic one by one. So the first part of the topic that we would like to see here is COVID-19 implications for business. So when we talk about COVID-19 implications for business, we will use something called the pause effect. P-O-S-E, the pause effect. So the pause effect is, P stands for psychological implications. Psychological implications of COVID-19. O stands for operational implications. S stands for structural implications, while E stands for economic implications. So, POSE, pause effect, will study for the business. We'll study psychological implications first. So, what are the pause effect psychological implications for business? So, we are now going to discuss the psychological implications of COVID-19 on business. The psychological implications. The first part, we study psychological implications of the customer. Customer's first part, the psychological implication is faith, science fiction in plans, nothing works. Now friends, here we need to understand this in proper detail. Before coronavirus, a customer is an average human being. Your business customer is just like any other human being. What has happened is, due to this coronavirus pandemic, before that, people used to believe in God. People used to believe in good practices, and there was inherent belief in all of us that good people will be rewarded by God and bad people will be punished by God. This coronavirus has suddenly shaken so many people's faith, so many people's trust in good practices, because they saw that when this virus came, good and bad, both kind of people got equally punished. I am not taking any religious angle here. I am just trying to say that people are shaken from inside. Those who had great faith in their prayers, in their religious practices, in the good deeds, are shaken. There was another class of people who always believed in science. And what all the science fiction movies told us always, that human beings' biggest threat is some aliens taking over Earth, or some big unidentified object hitting the Earth, and so on and so forth. And the people who believed in that science fiction are also shaken. That we are talking about science fiction, we are talking about going to the Mars, we are talking about having human colonies across the solar system or maybe beyond. And we can't find a simple virus. We can't fight a simple virus. They are shaken from inside. Third, you talk with anybody and everybody will tell you that we had so plans before this lockdown started. We were planning this, we started this new business, we started this new branch, we started this initiative, we were planning for a bright future, and suddenly this happened. If this would not have happened, maybe the future would have been different. So next time when these people will plan for something, they will be very conscious, because this has jolted them, this has destroyed their plans. Their foolproof plans didn't work. So when you deal with your customer, you have to understand their psychology. The first part is that faith, science fiction or plans, their belief in them is shaken down. Second part, value for money more than ever, and global to local reliability factor. Let me elaborate on both the points. Value for money. Before coronavirus pandemic, people were not so conscious about spending the money. But what has happened is because of corona, lockdown, many people lost their jobs. Many people suffered heavy losses in their businesses. And suddenly the flow of money actually got impacted. There are many people whose flow of money was not so impacted, or they were really not very impacted by this coronavirus, but they saw people around them getting financially really affected by this coronavirus. So they also got conscious. So the money is same, but today that same money's value has increased. Earlier, like to spend 1,000 rupees or 5,000 rupees, they were not thinking much. Today they are thinking even to spend 100 rupees. I know people who bought luxury cars worth 50 lakh rupees without even giving a second thought, now even thinking of buying a cheaper version of their smartphone next time. So that's how the value of money psychologically has increased in their mind. So when your business goes to them, as they are your customers and you want them to spend on your products, you need to keep in mind that for them, now the value of money is very high. Third thing is, as I said here, global to local reliability factor. Global to local. What happened is during this pandemic, during this coronavirus episode, which is still ongoing, people realized that when I needed grocery the most, it was my local grocery player which provided me the grocery. When I needed medicines the most, my local medical store has provided me the medical facilities. When I needed to buy anything, when I needed anything at all, I had to depend on my local market. Online players were not delivering. They in fact shut their shops. Malls shut their shops. Branded things shut their shops. So there is a strong undercurrent, a loyalty factor towards the local players now. They may be inefficient, they may not be giving us the great discount, but they were there when we needed them the most. Maybe this sentiment will fade with time, but as of now, there is a strong sentiment, a favorable sentiment for Indian businesses, for local businesses. So, your business need to think how you can take advantage of this, because they feel, today customers feel local are more reliable than global. So these are the three psychological factors that are affecting the customer. Now let's see the psychological factors that are affecting the economy. First factor is trust deficit in the business models. Second factor is savings versus spending. And third is fear of transactions. Let me take you through one by one. Let's first discuss the trust deficit in business models. What has happened now is, earlier you could find angel investors looking for bright ideas. Startups were getting huge fundings. Businesses were getting financiers, partners. After this pandemic, everybody is conscious. The trust in the traditional business model is shaken now. Nobody could think that luxurious hotel will be in so much of losses. Nobody could think that travel business will shatter. Nobody could think that malls and multiplexes will crash someday. Nobody could think so many things that has happened during this time. So the trust in the standard business model is now shaken. So it's very difficult to get partners who are ready to invest into the business. Yes, today banks are handing over the cheap loans to whoever has a good balance sheet. That's because they have so much of money to disburse. But money alone cannot take your business forward. You need strategic partners. And for that, you need to regain their trust in your business model by making your business model more adaptable to the current coronavirus situation. Second factor here is savings versus spending. See, You read any financial newspaper, you read any financial article, you read any investment guru's advice, the first thing they say nowadays is cash is king, cash is king. Save cash, keep cash with you, you never know. So earlier, it made financial sense to invest or to spend to help economy. Today, it is making financial sense to save the money, keep the money with you. Earlier, people would advise you that you keep money with you or you just keep it idle in the bank, then you are actually losing money because of the inflation and because of time value of money. But today, they are saying, no, keep money with you. You are not earning anything, no problem, you are not losing it also. So this saving versus spending, that sentiment, psychological factor is affecting the businesses today. And next, fear of transactions. Worst part, you start your business, your customers are willing to spend on your product or services, but the biggest problem is fear of transactions. No customer is willing to come to your showroom, to come to your business place. No customer is willing to either pay in cash or collect the cash from you because of the fear of the contamination. No customer is even willing to touch the product or service that you are actually selling him, because there is a fear of transaction. Any transaction which involves human touch is actually creating that panic in everybody's eyes. Another set of customers, that those who have not been very comfortable with the digital payment structure and who have not been very forthcoming in using UPI and other payment methods, they are also very fearful of this digital transactions. So physical and digital, both kind of transactions, the customers have fear of transaction. So sometimes your business is not getting that customer, not because of your business or your product offering, but because customer doesn't want to transact. So fear of transaction is the big psychological factor that's affecting the businesses right now. Now, here we will see next factor of the pose effect, that is operational implications. So here, pose effect O, operational implications of the business. Now when we talk about operational implications of the business, first operational implications for actually the business, the first part is innovative products and services delivery methods are required. Now just as we were discussing that today people have fear of transactions. So you need to have very innovative way, very innovative method to deliver your product and services, which makes them very confident about the transaction. So many companies around you might see, they are actually publicizing that they have a no contact delivery system. They publicize that more than their product features, because that's the need of the day. So you need to be very, very creative and innovative about the product and service delivery method required. Second and third point are very, very important. Second point is new negotiation skills required and making virtual meetings effective. Those of you who teach negotiation skills, or those of you who research on that, or those of you who are business people and actually conduct negotiations, you understand one thing: the most important part in the negotiation is to read body language, is to read gestures and postures, is to read between the lines, it's to understand the tone and the way of saying. It's about making that person comfortable in that environment or making that person uncomfortable in that environment, for that matter, whatever is required. So negotiation skills, those soft skills, are very, very important, very, very effective for successful negotiations. But now the problem is, in the digital mode, in a Zoom meeting, in a video call, the negotiation skills require a complete transformation, because you actually can't observe every movement of your the person with whom you are negotiating. You can't observe that person completely. You just see the face. Sometimes even the face is that bandwidth is low, video is close, just that we'll talk. So negotiation happens over plenty of things. Just a small pat on the back, just a nice smile, just timely comment. All these things are becoming difficult with the coronavirus because of the digital way of interacting with people. So negotiation skills needs to be completely different, needs to undergo a complete transformation now. And virtual meetings, the same thing. Virtual meeting usually you do with your own people, your own team. Negotiations is usually with the other people, but it could be other way around also. You might be negotiating something with your employee, or you might be having a virtual meeting with your clients. But same in the virtual meeting. Physical meeting, you can see someone paying attention, not paying attention. You can read the body language. You can see this person has understood, this person not understood. I should repeat this point. In virtual meeting, this is a big challenge. And we have to accept that virtual meeting is the new reality. So we have to make these virtual meetings very, very effective. So operational, when we are operating day to day, so negotiations are part of day to day operations. Meetings are part of day to day operations. We need to focus and improve upon those points. Second, operational implications for the employees. What are the operational implications for the employees? Making work from home effective is a challenge. Now, work from home is a necessity today. Everybody is getting work from home. But you ask any employer, not officially, but off the record, they will tell you they are not happy with work from home, with at least most of the employees. You ask any employee, officially, they will tell you that yes, work from home has not reduced their productivity, but off the record, they will tell you that actually in work from home, the productivity levels are low. The reason is that work from home is not an effective method? No, work from home is a very effective method. Why this is happening is because we are not used to work from home. So work from home is something new. We need to adapt to that. That's why businesses have to make sure that work from home is an effective tool to use. The next point, fragile mental health due to lack of human touch points and assessment of performance require new parameters. Now here we should understand that in a day-to-day office environment, your employee meets so many employees. They share jokes, they share their updates about their family. Sometimes they just go for a cup of coffee together. And there is a human touch to the entire day, which releases the stress. But when you are work from home situation, you are sitting at home, not going out, not getting any sunlight, not getting any vitamin D, not getting any human touch. You don't have anybody to share a joke. You don't have anybody to, buck up your mood when you are down. That translates into a fragile mental health of your employee. And today's world is very dangerous for people with fragile mental health, because even if you scolded them a little for something, you never know what their next step could be. So you have to be very, very careful that people in the work from home situation will have a very fragile mental health, at least most of them. Next factor that we are discussing here is assessment of the performance. Earlier, performance assessment used to happen in a standard method. You have the 360-degree appraisal. You ask the subordinate, ask the colleagues, ask the superiors, then you ask them their progress, their key responsibility areas, blah, 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 all that stuff. But now performance appraisal will require a complete new kind of structure, because when it's in a work from home situation, the work is customized for employees. A different tasks are given in a different way. So when you assess their performance, you can't use the standard ready tools. For digital work, the tools needs to be more customized. Because when you are work from home situation, most of the time your colleague or your boss is actually not the right person to comment 100% on your work. That's why as the reporting changes, your assessment methods need to upgrade with the same. Next factor of the pose, structural implications. S, the structural implications. So let's see what are the structural implications for the business. Structural implications, the first part we see here is organizational structure. In organizational structure, the first thing is a paradigm shift in reporting structure. As we were just discussing, that because the digital work is more customized, it's no longer the traditional reporting system. It's more customized reporting system. You are reporting only to the concerned person who is involved in this work. So there is a paradigm shift in reporting structure. The next point is very important. The inefficiencies will be highlighted now. See, earlier in a traditional framework, someone with an inefficient attitude can hide behind the meetings, behind the project deadlines, behind the teamwork. But in this digital format, that's the advantage. Efficiencies will come out, inefficiencies will be pointed out. You have nowhere to hide because the reporting structure is now different. Your daily work will be assessed, track will be maintained. So inefficiencies will be highlighted more. Perform or perish will be the new norm. Fresh energy will challenge the seniority. Now, because it's a customized work, your performance is continuously assessed. So it's either perform or perish, because you will not have any excuses anymore. Gone are the days when you used to do, your employee used to do, say, 2-day, like 5-day work in 2 days and spend rest 3 days just passing the time here and there. In digital environment, in work from home situation, in a more structured way, that is impossible to do. So it's either perform or perish. Second thing, your fresh energy will matter more. Your adaptability to this work from environment, even if you are fresh, new, inexperienced, your the fresh new employees will start challenging the senior employees. So your new, fresh employees will start challenging the senior people, because fresh energy, fresh attitude will matter more. Seniority will matter less. Now, let's see structural implications for infrastructure. Now, robust digital infrastructure is a must now. Earlier, companies, depending on their preference, used to invest heavily into digital infrastructure or used to actually ignore it. There are still big companies which are simply operating with old desktops and a very outdated server system. But today's environment, this new challenge will have you to make sure that you have a very robust, up-to-date, latest digital infrastructure. Second point is physical infrastructure will lose its significance. Now here, this point we need to understand that earlier physical infrastructure was everything. How many branches you have, how many offices you have. If you want presence in a particular state, you need to have a head office, you need to have branch offices there, you need to have people on the ground. Unless you have people on the ground in that particular state, city or area, you cannot conquer that. But the things have changed. Actually, physical infrastructure doesn't matter anymore. What matters is digital infrastructure. Digital infrastructure has to be robust. Physical infrastructure is slowly losing its significance. Next is BioSafe certificate will be equally, if not more valuable as green energy certificate. Many campuses take pride, many branches, company head offices take pride in the fact that their structure, their office, their campus is actually green energy certified. Maybe in new time, if your campus is biosafety certified, it will matter more. If your campus is completely free from human touch and possible infections, that will matter more. So certification for your infrastructure is going to change vastly after this corona impact. So in infrastructure, 3 points: the digital infrastructure has to be very robust, latest, up to date. Physical infrastructure is slowly losing its significance or importance. And third, your green energy certificate will matter less now. Your biosafety certificate might matter more. So these were the pose effect, third part, structural implications for the business. Now let's see pose effect E. E is economic implications. So let's see economic implications now. Economic implications for the business because of COVID-19 situation. Economic implications, first we will see for sales and marketing, the most important part for any business, the sales and marketing. What are the economic implications of sales and marketing? Digital and social media marketing would be in focus now. Now you check with any business, most of the times, for the big businesses also, their entire marketing campaigns, hardly 10% budget is allotted to digital and social media. Majority budget goes to the print media, outdoor hoardings, events and whatnot. 5 to 10% goes to the digital media or social media. This will change drastically now, because more and more people are now accessing content digitally, are now doing all the things online. They were doing it before also, but now they are forced to stay at home unless it's required to go outside. So in this situation, the digital and social media marketing will take a center stage in any promotional campaign. We'll see the next point now. Customer visit, store and showroom site visits will be increasingly through video calls, and 360-degree VR adaptability will give an advantage. Now, you want your customer to visit your store, you want your customer to visit your factory, you want your customer to visit your showroom. That has to be through video call or Zoom call, but the people who will have integrated 360-degree virtual reality visits will have an advantage. Now, you need to move on with the technology. You need to provide your customer the option to be there virtually. It's like you have seen those virtual reality headgears which you wear and you feel as if you are inside that scene. The same way you can make videos of your premises, your shops, your showrooms in the 360-degree environment and provide that to the customer. And they can actually feel as if they have visited the place. It's not very difficult. It's really not very difficult. So people who have 360-degree virtual reality adaptation will have an added advantage. These were the economic implications of the sales and marketing. Next is wide open market. Now we must understand here that products, services will no longer follow physical boundaries. Anyone can compete with anyone. As I said earlier what it used to be, you want to be in that this particular state, you have to have an office, you have to have people on the ground, your presence needs to be there, then only you can conquer that market. It's no longer applicable. When the things go digital, the person sitting in Bathinda can compete with person sitting in Berlin, because your product and services will not have any boundaries, physical boundaries. So market is wide open. There are advantages, there are disadvantages. Disadvantages is for the established people, because with hard work they have established their dominance in this market and everybody will jump into the market. But the advantage would be for the newcomers and the new entrants, because they can disrupt the market by offering completely innovative things. So market is wide open Affordable cost, as we were discussing, affordable cost, superior service and innovative solutions will rule. An unorganized player will get organized or vanish. Now, affordable cost. When things go online, cost is easily compared. So cost will become an advantage. But along with that, superior service. When you're transacting physically, the one thing you are assured of is that you are meeting a human being, and there is a physical existence of that place. So you'll always get service from them. Digital, today is there, tomorrow is not there. There's a general fear that we have in our mind. So the people who are transacting digitally, the businesses which will provide very good service, they will always prefer them, because service is a big fear in customers' mind. So affordability, good service and innovative solution. If you cannot differentiate in terms of cost or service, your product offering should be so innovative that customer goes for that, because in digital the customer will have so many options to compare. So economic implications, sales and marketing, the digital and social media marketing will be the main focus. Customer visit ideally should be 360-degree virtual reality. Product and services will no longer have a physical boundaries. Affordable cost, superior service and innovative solution will rule. That's why the last point, unorganized players, small players will either get organized or they will vanish. So this market will promote small players to compete with big players, provided those small players are very well organized. So this was the pause effect. These were the factors affecting business: psychological factors, operational factors, structural factors and economic implications. This was the pause effect we studied. Post COVID-19, what challenges businesses will face and what business can do about that. So now we will move to the second topic, that is COVID-19 implications for education. So to understand COVID-19 implications on education, again we will use the pause effect that we have used for business implications. Pause, as you know now, P stands for psychological implications, O stands for operational implications, S for structural implications and E for economic implications. So step by step we will understand what are these different implications that COVID-19 has brought on education sector and what we can do about it. So let's see one by one. First we'll see the psychological implications. Pause effect, psychological implications on education. Psychological implications, first we'll understand the psychological implications of COVID-19 situation on students and parents. First, as we all know that now there is a huge fear for classrooms, huge fear for gatherings, huge fear for traveling. So parents and students are looking for the solutions which doesn't involve classroom, which doesn't involve physical classrooms, which doesn't involve traveling, which doesn't involve large gathering, because they have a huge fear for all this. Next point is aggressive cost benefit analysis and shift from brand to content. Now these 2 points we should understand very carefully. When I say aggressive cost benefit analysis, that doesn't mean the cost in monetary terms. What happens is that in this current scenario, when average human being is very scared to go outside in large gatherings, the cost does not only involve monetary cost. The cost benefit analysis will involve also the cost, the risk that you are taking, that also would be a cost. The risk that you will take to travel every day, the risk that you will take to be present physically against the kind of benefit that that thing will offer you. So there will be an aggressive cost benefit analysis, and students and parents would try to find out that whether it's worth going physically to that particular educational initiative or digital would be a better option, not only monetary terms but in terms of risk also. and shift from brand to content. This will be a huge shift that education industry is going to see. Is that earlier brand was everything. You from whichever university you are studying, whichever college you are studying, what's their ranking, how well reputed they are, or how well known they are, that used to matter a lot. Now slowly people will shift to the content rather than the brand, because in this digital world today you want people who know their content rather than people who are from the reputed universities. So that doesn't mean reputed universities will lose its significance, no, but even the reputed universities, reputed educational organizations which offer any kind of course and training need to work very hard on their content, because just the reputation will take a back seat. People will shift from brand to the content. Next, psychological implication is for educational providers. What are the psychological implications for education providers? It's a catch-22 situation. Catch-22 situation because there is a discomfort in the new technologies, but there is a fear of lagging behind others. Let me explain this. When I say education providers, so I am including the entire system, the teachers, professors, trainers, and the team which works for them. So because we are still in that very traditional mode, there is an obvious discomfort to the new technology. It's very obvious. People have not done their video lectures prior to this. So even while maybe going through this course, you will be able to identify which faculty has done video lectures in past and which is doing it for the first time, because that discomfort with the digital technology comes out so obviously. So that discomfort is there, but the problem is that if they don't do digital teaching, or they don't go for the digital tools, then they have a fear of lagging behind. So they are discomfortable with the digital technology, but at the same time they are forced to use them. So that's a catch-22 situation for education providers. Unable to implement long-term changes due to fear of uncertainty. Now many people with whom I talk to, they are still waiting for the life to be normal. They are still waiting for the miracle to happen. They are still waiting for pre-corona days. Now will world never be same again? No, I am not saying that. World will definitely, there will be some vaccine, there will be some medicine someday. The threat of coronavirus will go away, but now we have to understand that this kind of threat will always loom large on us. Today it's coronavirus, tomorrow it could be coronavirus, we don't know. God forbid this kind of viruses falls into hands of terrorists. God forbid countries start thinking about biological war after this experiment. God forbid all this happen, but we have to be sure of one thing, that this kind of biohazards are going to increase rather than decrease. So we should not actually think about when the pre-coronavirus days will come back. Rather, we should prepare ourselves that this kind of pandemic, if it comes again, we are fully prepared. But the problem right now with education providers is most of them are unable to implement long-term changes because fear of uncertainty. They feel we will shift to digital, and what if the things become normal? So everybody is looking at this as a temporary solution, not the permanent change. And those who will see as a permanent change, I'm not saying it will be permanently digital and physical education will go away. No, it has to be a right balance. You should have a digital infrastructure in place, you should have everything in place, so that in a moment's notice, you shift from physical to digital or digital to physical. So these are the long-term changes that any education provider will need to do. And if you don't do that, then the stress levels are always high. Whenever you need to shift from physical to digital, you are stressed. And whenever you shift from again digital to physical, again you are stressed. That's why it's very important for education provider to understand that the time has come where the way, the people who adopted smartphones, there were people who said, we don't need smartphone, we use our phone only for calling purposes. They find it very difficult to transact in today's world. Same way, you find people who have not started using internet and they are not relevant today. Same way, this kind of threats makes sure that you have to adapt to the digital environment, otherwise you will not be relevant in the future. Next we see is operational implications on education. Now, what are the operational implications? Let's see. Operational implications, the first part is on imparting education. Now, imparting education means the operations which makes sure that education is delivered. What are the operational challenges or implications that COVID-19 has brought to these operations? The first part is innovative educational delivery method will be required. You'll say it's obvious, no? You need to be innovative. It has to be no. Understand. You remember those days when teachers used to teach on blackboard with a white chalk, right? Then they shifted to whiteboards. Once teachers shifted to whiteboard, initially they were teaching just like they were teaching on the blackboard because they didn't found much difference into that. But then what happened later? They understood that whiteboard offers them much more flexibility in terms of using different colors, in terms of easily you can correct your mistake, the rubbing is very easy, and n number of things that they realize. And then they started thinking how I can inculcate this thing into my teaching, how I can make it more effective, my teaching, because of the whiteboards. Then came the day when projectors came. Initially they just taught what they were teaching on whiteboard on projectors. Slowly they understood, projector has its own advantages. I can use images, I can use graphics, I can use so many things. And then they started including those things into their teaching to make the teaching more effective. Now the time has come. When I say innovative educational delivery method means that if you are taking a digital lecture, a video lecture, and you are taking as if you are taking it in a classroom by writing it on the board and all, then you are actually abusing that medium. You are not making full use of that medium. Now the educational imparters have to get adapted to this new delivery method and make their teaching more innovative, make their teaching more effective. Next point is new digital skills and resources must be integrated. Now, you see, making virtual classroom effective will be a challenge and new digital skills and resources must be integrated. This point we should understand that it's not just about video. It's not just about going online. It's not just about taking a Zoom lecture. No. It's about including more and more digital and virtual resources into your training. It's about making your study material, making your notes, making your lecture part of your lecture, the assistance that you require from the visual medium. It's all about that. That's why you need to have new digital skills and resources which you can use in these video lectures which you could not use on the projector or the whiteboard teaching. You need to identify and include them, and you have to make this virtual classroom effective. Now, virtual classroom has a good thing and a bad thing. Good thing of virtual classroom is that you reach everybody very easily, but the bad thing is that the standard traditional setup, discipline, class control loses its meaning, because when you are virtually imparting the education, the one who is not interested will keep his video off, audio off, and won't pay any attention. You can't do anything about it. If someone is sitting in your classroom, in your training room, you can actually make sure that you change your content accordingly, or you just ask that person to pay more attention. But in virtual classroom, if your content, if your delivery style is not up to the mark, you will immediately start losing attention of people. That's why to make virtual classroom effective is very, very, very important stuff. So what are the challenges for the teachers or the professors? This was the challenging for the system now. Particularly for teachers and professors, the first thing that we already discussed was teaching methods needs to be modified to suit the digital mode. These are the challenges you are going to face. People are not going to pay attention if they don't like. There won't be any class control. There won't be any discipline methods. There won't be any whiteboard teaching. There should not be a whiteboard teaching in digital videos. So you need to adapt to the new digital methods and make your teaching that much more effective. Class control and discipline needs innovation. Innovative method of class control. How you can do, how you can make sure that everybody is paying attention, how you can identify that someone is not paying the attention, not the traditional way, but the smart digital way. And assessment methods. Now, earlier, you teach something, you give them assignment, they submit the assignment, you take some test. Okay. When you are in a virtual world, assessment methods are completely different. It needs to be innovative. You cannot use the same assessment parameters or assessment methods which you used pre-COVID era. As I said again, after COVID, some days the situation will become normal, but we should be, the smart educational establishments will learn a lesson from this and will prepare themselves for the future, that whenever, God forbid, if this kind of situation arises again, they are fully prepared in terms of imparting the education to the assessment methods, everything. That's why it's important that assessment methods undergo a complete transformation. So these were the operational implications of education. Let's understand the structural implications. The structural implications on education. First point, organizational structure. Now, when you talk about an educational institution, till now, the trainer, the teacher, the professor used to be the most important person. Unfortunately, now the digital and IT team will get more significance. Yes, digital and IT team cannot do anything if they don't have a great teacher in front of them. But the things have changed now. See, earlier teacher used to be the one-man show. Professor used to be the one-man show. Professor needs to be very good at communication. Professor should have content, should have a delivery style, should have class control, everything dependent on one person. But now, things are different. Because it's a digital world. Anybody can deliver. Someone who has a good delivery style will be in front of video. Someone who has a good content will write the script. Someone who is good with the digital scripts, digital tools will make the video. Someone who is great at keeping the discipline and class control will control the entire streaming part. So we must understand that teaching and training will now be a team effort. So team will matter more, like movies, right? The good looking person becomes hero in front of screen, but those who have a good voice sings the background song for him. The director directs, story writer writes the story. Same way the teaching will become in virtual world. Teaching and training will become a team effort now. The concept of vacations will become hazy. What vacations? Used to get vacations because of some reasons, like in summertime, because it's a water scarcity, it's very hot for students, used to get vacations. It's a digital world, there are no vacations. Concept of vacation doesn't exist. If this digital education world evolves, actually vacation will become hazy, because there won't be any semesters, there won't be any breaks, there won't be anything, because it's all digital. Everybody is working as per their convenient time. So there will be breaks, but the concept of vacation will become hazy. Next are the structural implications on infrastructure. Earlier we talked organizational structure, we are talking about infrastructure. Infrastructure somewhat on the lines of business. Same in the education, robust digital infrastructure is must. Many educational institutions, reputed educational institutions, I know personally, just have a pathetic website. That's the only digital tool they have, and that too they have got developed at some cheap rate, at some low quality provider. Because they never thought they require all this digital resources before this pandemic. Now the things have changed. Every educational establishment will require a robust digital infrastructure. Physical infrastructure will lose its significance. Same like business. It's no longer that people actually need to travel to one place to other to be at your place. No. physical infrastructure to impart some knowledge. You don't require a huge campuses now, big buildings now. Physical infrastructure will lose its significance because in digital world there are no boundaries, and whatever physical campuses you have, again like businesses, it has to be biosafe certified, it has to be human touch less operation certified, it has to be safe against biohazards, because then students, teachers, every stakeholder will feel more comfortable to visit your campus. So these were the structural implications. So now we come to the last part of pose effect, the economic implications. When we talk about economic implications of COVID-19 on education, that's divided into two parts. The economic implications for attracting talents and enrollments. Now you talk with any educational institution, you talk with any college, university, anyone, they will tell you one thing. Now Harvard doesn't make you smarter, IIT, IIMs don't make you smart. They are at the top because the kind of students that they attract. They are completely dependent on the talent, and they are in that virtuous cycle because they have a big brand, they attract the talent, and because the best of the best talent goes there, their students always perform well. But now when you want to attract the talent, as we have discussed previously, that in this virtual world, more than the brand, the content will matter, and that's where digital and social media campaigns will actually play a big role. Now unfortunately in India that's not the trend, but in the Western countries, when you see all the top universities give so much importance to the digital marketing, social media marketing, they are actually running after students to attract the talent. In India it's the other way around, that students are running after good institutes to get the admission. But this trend is bound to change. Now in the virtual world, in the digital world, in the post-COVID-19 world, if top education institutes also want to attract the talent, they have to fight it out in the digital and social media platforms. They have to speak their students' language in their messages. So digital and social media campaigns will become a norm. Educational institutes' websites must provide virtual visits, because many great institutions actually take pride in their campuses, but the time has come where campus visit won't be a very natural and easy thing. So more and more educational institutes, more and more educational establishments need to provide virtual campus tours on their websites. And the next point, a very important one, 360-degree VR lectures, virtual reality lectures, 360-degree. Now, you remember in 2014 election campaign rally, our then Prime Minister candidate and our current Prime Minister had addressed, I think, 100 plus rallies at the same time by using hologramic technique. They used holograms. So actually people felt that he is present there in front of them and addressing them. That time that thing didn't look so important, it looked like more like a technological gimmick. But today you think in terms of taking lectures. You have 360-degree virtual reality environment, and you have an holographic teacher present inside the classroom. Now, we should not think that it's not possible, because it's already done 6 years back. So think about conducting your lectures, your training program through holographic effect, as if the professor or the teacher is present inside the drawing room of every student and personally talking with that student. That 360-degree virtual reality lectures might be the future. Next part is everyone will compete globally, very similar to the businesses. Enrollments will no longer follow any physical boundaries. Anyone and everyone can enroll anywhere and everywhere. So as we had discussed in the business part, some educational establishment in Bhatinda can actually compete with some establishment in Berlin, provided they have that quality, innovative offering and great delivery methodology. So physical boundaries won't matter. Nationally and internationally, everybody and anybody can enroll anywhere and everywhere. Innovative courses and superior delivery would be the key. Now when a person is learning virtually, he or she has more decision power, more say in deciding whether he or she wants to go for that course or not. So the content will be analyzed in great detail. Most of the times you go to a good university, good college, in a good course, 50% of them even don't read the syllabus, what's being taught. But in virtual world, they will go in deep. So innovative content would be the key. Excellent delivery method. The education establishments providing virtual reality classes will be preferred more than colleges providing video classes. So delivery method and innovative content would be superior delivery and innovative courses would be the key. And the last part in today's topic, smaller educational player with quality content will give established player run for their money. Earlier, it was like smaller players had smaller campuses. Smaller players had smaller budgets. Smaller players had smaller physical reach. But when we talk about the virtual world, post-COVID-19, as the education is moving more digital in the digital era, you will find that smaller educational institutes punching much above their weight, because social media marketing and digital marketing is much cheaper. It's well within their budget. Because they are young, they are small, they are more energetic and they are more innovative. They can do more experimentation. So they can offer creative content, they can experiment with the delivery method. So smaller player, provided they have a quality content and a unique delivery methodology, will definitely give established players a run for their money. When I say smaller player, I'm not talking about someone operating from couple of shops. No. Smaller means locally known educational institutes should have global aspirations. So this was the total discussion that we had about this. Our topic said that COVID-19 implications on business and education. Now we must understand that COVID-19 maybe this day, next year may not exist. Maybe there are already vaccines have been invented, already successful medicines have been invented, but we are now preparing for the huge psychological and operational change that this pandemic has brought to us. So we are getting prepared for that. And this, as we had discussed earlier, this might not be the only incidence. God forbid it might be misused by some terrorists someday. God forbid countries will enter into bio warfares. Or God forbid another virus come out. But this time we should not be unprepared. Today, after this pandemic, the businesses and the educational establishment which will learn and make themselves adaptable to this kind of hazards will have a very secure future. So it was a pleasure talking on this topic with all of you today, so that we can actually prepare ourselves for the future, the different and innovative and vastly transformed future that's staring at us. We are prepared for them. So this is Dr. Jignesh Pandya signing off. Thank you very much for your time and listening to me. Thank you.